do we make sure that all of the different parties don't collide mid-air? And I mean literally.
Well, that's a very good question. Firstly, it's getting to the stage when almost the only people not being involved are us in Syria right now. Secondly, the idea of coordination is going to prove increasingly difficult. It's kind of okay when you've got one or two powers coordinating, but you've now got the Russians, the coalition forces who are targeting ISIL. You've got the Israelis who at various times have struck in Syria as well. You've got Assad's forces. How are you going to coordinate all these things with a mechanism that's going to work? I think we run a serious risk of a terrible accident happening where one allied nation, if you like, takes out another who's engaged in, fighting terrorist activities.
Now we know Mr. Putin is not a man that we can trust on his word, but we just saw that clip from Sergei Lavrov's press conference. He did come across as very genuine in that these really were just targeting ISIL camps and the like. Is that, again, just a flat-out lie? Are we sure that this is Russia pulling the rug over the eyes of the West?
The Russians are masters of dissembling. Almost everything that comes out of the Kremlin these days is a lie of some kind. Lavrov is a very skilled diplomat. I think he showed his skill in that clip. It doesn't disguise the fact, though, that he's lying about what's happening and what the Russians are really doing, which is not fighting ISIL, but fighting everyone they consider opposed to the Assad regime.
Even if he is lying, can we really here on our high stool in Britain and in New York have an argument? Because this is very different from Ukraine. Ukraine, a sovereign area where the government welcomed involvement of the West, of peacekeeping forces and the like. But Syria is very different. And in fact, our involvement already is not welcomed by Assad, whereas Assad is welcoming Russian involvement. So do we even have an argument that we can push back against the Russians on?
Well, we actually do. It's called responsibility to protect. It's a UN doctrine that's been in place for some time, which suggests that when a state is incapable of stopping genocide or is actively engaging in genocide against its civilians and causing humanitarian chaos on the scale Assad's doing, we can intervene if we so choose. Now, so far we haven't done on a particularly high-scale level. Now, whether we're going to change that or not is a big question. Are we going to allow Putin and Iran to set the tone, or are we going to say, actually, Assad's got to go as well as ISIL? We're going to make a stand now, establish some safe havens where Putin can't intervene in and stop more chaos and civilians dying.
And you also say if we don't create those safe havens, we're going to be risking an even bigger blowback from jihadists. Why would you say that?
Well, if you look at the history of how jihadists recruit in the West, if you look at the videos, the propaganda they've done in the past and still do today, one of their prime arguments has always been the West does not care about Muslim lives. The West wants to stop, wants to see the Muslim world decimated, and it will do nothing to help save Muslims. Now, if the West does, in this case, not help the civilians of Syria, either against ISIL or against Assad, who's killed, remember, 10 times what ISIL have killed, they've got a great recruiting tool going forward. All we have to do is sit back and do nothing, and they have their recruiting tool. It's only if we actively get engaged and actually try and bring some peace to Syria that we pull that card from them. Otherwise, you are going to see tens or hundreds more of Western Muslim kids going to fight on behalf of ISIL and perhaps even fighting here against us.